this is Zahan, and today we're creating a relaxing desert house track, a style or genre that you'll find mostly on labels like Cafe De Anatolia. So let's get straight into the video. So the first thing to keep in mind when you're working on this type of style is that you get the BPM right. And since we're going for a very relaxing style, we're going to keep the BPM at 100. You can also work with 110, but I find that to be a bit too quick. We want to keep it really relaxing, chill, and down tempo. So 100 is going to do the job. And I remember starting off with the drums. That gives me the best foundation to start a track, getting the groove, the rhythm right. Therefore, I went with this kick that sounds like this on its own. And if we play it with the rest of our claps and hats, sounds like this. You can of course always switch out a few different kicks, drag them into your drum rack like this, and see which one sounds the best. There's always different kicks that you can go with, but my personal favorites are kicks that usually look like this, that have a bit of a transient, and then the fade out that looks like this. It's always a trial and error, always testing out different kicks to see which one fits well in the entirety of the whole track. Added a bit of EQ as you can see here. This is a typical EQ curve that I use mostly on my kicks. Add a bit of a low boost and a mid dip at around 100 to 150 Hertz. Without this boost, the kick would sound like this. I'd be very careful when it comes to boosting your lows like this, but for this specific kick, it worked out pretty well. Other than that, I didn't do any processing on the kick. Underneath the kick, you can find a short little hi-hat that sounds like this on its own. And as you can see, I took out a lot of the harsh frequencies, or most of the frequencies from the hi-hat. Really thins out the sample. And I mostly like to play around with sustain for hi-hats as well, and decay to shorten the sound. And I went with this setting because it sounded the best to my ears. So with the kick, sounds quite solid. For the claps, I have two different layers. One that is a tight clap and one being a loose clap. You can also see that I pre-shifted each clap by -5 milliseconds. You can do that by opening up this delay panel over here. And I like to pre-shift my claps because that gives a bit of an anticipation before the clap is usually supposed to hit. Sounds a bit more organic and more natural that way. So the tight clap sounds like this. You can find a few of these clap samples in the Azar Organic House production suite that is also coming out very soon. And a loose clap. And I call this a loose clap because you have a few of these little indents. You can recognize a clap by its looseness depending on how many indents it has. You can see this tight clap only has one main transient at the start, but this loose clap over here has 1, 2, 3 little transients, or indents, how I like to call them. Layering both of these sounds together sounds really cool. And if we play that with the hi-hat and the kick, very nice and organic. Love that. So that's it for our core drums group. Underneath that, we have our percs and our loops. So our percussions and our other loops. And I always like to start out with a percussion loop that fills out the space a bit. So this loop contains a mixture of a few congas and djembe sounds, darbuka sounds that are very usual for oriental type of sounds. I like the combination between these two because they fill out the core drums groove very well. It goes very well with the kick, hi-hat, and clap. From then on, I added a few shakers that sound like this. It's a very nice addition to the groove. That's that 16th note vibe. And you can see for these shakers, I added a bit of EQ as well. Took out most of the frequencies below 1K, added a bit of a high dip, so the highs aren't that harsh. And when I get my core percussions and my shakers ready, I like to add in conga fills that go well on the stereo spectrum, so left-right. And therefore I use this plugin called Dupinga by Pulpa Audio. I'm going to make a separate tutorial on this later on. And you can individually draw in your sounds. You can see I play around with these different velocities here. can change the velocity by hitting Alt and dragging the sample up or down. And then you can place these individual notes. In this case, these are small little 16th notes, wherever you feel like they fill the drum groove the best. So if I play this together with our other conga and percussion loop and together with our core drums, it sounds like this. And you can see for the processing, I added a auto pan to pan the bongo sounds or the conga sounds on the left and right stereo spectrum. And I also added a shaper box 3. This is optional, but I like the way this pan option worked out for me, because you can see this is the left side, this is the right side. Put it on 8th bar mode, and if we play it only with the shaper box, it sounds like this. You can hear the bongos are being played on mostly the right side. A few notes are on the left as well. If we disable this, it sounds like this. Sounds come out of the middle. I usually like it when congas are panned either on the left or right and have a bit more stereo information. So this is what we have in total so far. Then I added a bit of a filler groove that sounds like this. This filler groove sounds like this on its own. It's just a loop that contains another shaker groove and a bit of detailed percussion. You can find a ton of these grooves in the Azar pack that's coming out soon. Cool. After that, I added some toms. I love adding tom grooves. They're so much fun and they give the track a lot of groove. Really make you want to dance already. And remember, you can always switch out the kicks. You can always try different ones during the composition phase or the mixing phase. And see which one suits your needs best. This is a trick that I like to use every now and then. Just switch out the different kicks to see if there might be another one that fits better. After I have the main drum groove ready, I like to add a atmospheric swell or some kind of melodic element. And I chose this one. Since we're creating relaxing desert house, I feel like this is the right type of sound to use. It sounds very lush, mellow. I have a ton of these swells in this pack as well. And this is exactly the sound that we're looking for. What you basically do is add in a swell like this. For the processing of this sound, I went for a low cut, removed a lot of those mud low end frequencies since we don't need them in this specific sound. And I also removed the low mids around 100 to 150 hertz and kept the highs in. So without the EQ, it would sound somewhat like this. Also cool. But if you play that with the bass that we'll get back to later, it clashes. So what we're going to do is remove the lows. Keep the sound clean. I added in a bit of delay, so it slowly fades out. And you might ask yourself, what is this holy pads rack? Is it even on? Is it doing anything? Well, now it's off, but previously I used it to create a pad sound that sounds like this. This is actually this sound here, but just frozen, and I made a pad out of it. It's like a texture that plays throughout the whole track, more of a background type style. In order to create pad sounds like this, what I'd like to do is create a new audio track, hit resampling, make sure to solo this layer over here, hit record input, play the sound, and enable the pad. Let's say right now. Cool. Now you have the sound frozen. You can even stop the track and disable the sound, and you can record this into a new layer. So now it's recording whatever's coming out of here into here. You can even mess around with the parameters here. It's a really fun little tool to play with. You can stop the recording. You can also disable the holy pads rack here. You can take your favorite section, you can loop it like this. So let's play that together with the other sound. So that's how I create pads. But in this case, we're going to delete this layer here and leave in the layer that we have here. As you can see, for this layer, I removed some of the lows at about 100, 150 hertz and added a bit of a resonant peak. This is something that I like to do sometimes when I try to emphasize certain notes in a pad sound like this. So you could always emphasize some peaks with a really resonant EQ like this. Gives it a bit more tone, but in this case, I'm gonna keep it at this. Cool, so if we play these sounds together with our drum groove, it sounds like this. Very nice and relaxing. And of course, the best way to create an Oriental or Desert House track is, as the name already says, include a bit of elements that incorporate the Oriental house vibe. Like these native type of instruments, these ethnic instruments, the Comanche, I think that's called like that. Or some flutes. Very orientally, deserty. Awesome. And you also have a ton of these sounds in the Azar pack. Cool. Every few bars I add in these fill sounds that sound like this. So a small little arpeggio in the background. Synth arpeggio. Let's play it here. This is a trick that artists like Armin Miran, Hrach like to use a lot. Small synth arpeggio fills in the background. This is one of Production Music Live presets from the Felix Raphael Organic pack. It's called ARP Fireworks. I like this sound for little fills like this. Cool. Once we have our most important elements together, like the core drums, the percussion, shakers, melodics, and pads, what I like to do is to add in a bass sound. For this type of genre, I like to stick with very percussive and short bass sounds like this. Every time I need a short little bass pluck, I use this simple sub pluck from Diva that I created a while ago. You can also find this sub pluck on my Patreon page. It's actually really simple. 2 notes, one a bit shorter, playing the root note. The second one a bit longer, also playing the root note. And if you play this only with our drums, sounds solid. Keep your basses simple. They really don't need to be complex for this type of style. Also, one of the main elements from this track is this vocal ambient pad layer that you can hear in the background. It's almost also like a type of atmosphere. I'm going to play that for you solo. So these are actually a few of my vocals that I recorded using this microphone over here. Really simple. Just record in whatever sounds you like. This is how the vocal sounds without any effects added. So for the processing, I added a low cut, bit of a high boost, taking out most of those low end frequencies, a bit of vocal compression. For compression of vocals, I mostly add in the glue compressor because I find it to be a very natural type of compressor to use for vocals. Also, it's an Ableton stock compressor from Cytomic, so really great. I use it a lot on vocals. And I basically adjust the threshold to the point where I have 5 dB or 10 dB of gain reduction, as you can see here. And then I increase the volume or the gain, the makeup gain, using this knob here. Added a bit of reverb, a lot of decay, and some delay on this 4-bar mode. You can hear a few more filler vocals here. Same processing. Cool. And I also added a female vocal, which is my mother, in the background, which sounds like this on its own. Same processing, low cut, compressor, reverb, delay. Basically copy pasted that, and I used Waves Tune Real Time to adjust the pitch of this vocal to the root note of the track. So the root note is D sharp minor. That's the scale, that's the key of the track. And then I use the note transition and speed. If you crank them down like this, it sounds like T-Pain. Didn't want that effect, so I reduced the note transition time a bit. I like to keep vibrato on for this. It's a really nice plugin that I like to use for tuning vocals. Without Waves Tune, it sounds like this. So I had to do a bit of pitch correction for this vocal. And you can see all these vocals are going into a separate track called Vox. And on this Vox channel, you can see there's a compressor, but he's not doing anything. Didn't feel like I needed it for this. But there's a black hole. And what this black hole does is it really adds a lot of reverb. Mixes at 100% right now. That's because I wanted to create these ambient drone-ish type soundscapes. I didn't want the vocal to sound like a vocal. I wanted it to sound like a relaxing atmosphere in the background. So I like using black hole for these types of sounds. Just loaded it up on the vocal group bus or the group channel here and added mix to 100%. Removed some of the lows here, and this is how it sounds. Without, with, very ethereal, eternal, very relaxing. Also added a bit of low cut to clean out the sample a bit more. And if we play these types of sounds with our melodics, sounds very, very mellow. This already gives me goosebumps. Add in some percussion. And now we can add in our main drums. And now the bass. This is the entire vibe of the track. And to make it more interesting, I like to add some filler sounds to the backgrounds or effects, texture effects. Sorry, I need to promote my pack. I have a ton of these sounds also in the Azar MIDI's organic pack. These crazy fill sounds that you can add in the background of your tracks. For example, one is called Swoosh here. This is basically like an impact or transition sound. Added that to the background, so it sounds like this. You can see there's a bit of EQ going on, taking out those harsh high frequencies and a lot of the mud, the low end. Added this auto filter in for some more high cut, and this color copy. This is a analog delay type plugin that I love to use for dub delay type effects. You'll be able to hear that better in a minute. Same for this layer over here. These filler perks are basically these sounds that I previously showed you. And this one is this one. And this one. Right, so these awesome little conga and detailed fill percussion sounds that are being played in the background. Same processing as for the swoosh effect, low cut, bit of high dampening, high cut. I use these high cut techniques to make the sounds move more towards the background, because if a sound has a lot of high frequencies, it feels like it's in your face, feels like it's directly in front of you. And since we're going for relaxing house, you want to move those more towards the background. And I like to reduce the harshness of the high frequencies using these types of EQs or auto filters. And if we solo the sound and play it without the color copy effect, it sounds like this. If we add color copy, this analog delay. Awesome. Again. This plugin is truly amazing if you want to create these long fade out delays. It's also from the same manufacturer as Diva from UHE. And I use it for these dub, delay, echo type of sounds that really fade out long, that you can also hear a lot in reggae or dub. You could also decrease the feedback time here, but I like the way it fades out, so I crank that up. And if we play that in the entirety of the mix, it sounds like this. Awesome, I just love the way it sounds. You can hear that all of these tracks, besides the drums, the core drums, they're all moving into a specific group called sidechain ducking. So the vocals, the bass, the effects, they're all going into SC ducking. Whenever the kick plays, every other element is reduced in volume. Let's hear that. There's that ducking effect. We don't need that much of sidechain in this genre. This is a very relaxing, soothing genre, and therefore we want to keep the threshold very high. You can also see the gain reduction here. You can also reduce the harshness of the compression by reducing the ratio here. I mostly like to keep it at 4:1 and then let the threshold do the job. Cool. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this tutorial, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. It does help me out. And a great way to support this channel is by heading on to Patreon or getting some of those sound packs. And by the way, these Mid-East organic sounds, the full version of the Azar pack is coming out very soon. So stay tuned for that. Cheers. See you in the next video.